With Anthony Velasquez today, he's running for Watertown City Council. Anthony, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me, John.
Let's learn a little bit about you. Brief bio. Go ahead.
Of course. I'm 31 years old. I live on the city's south side. I'm an Army brat, so I moved around a lot in my youth. You know, I always wanted a community that I could call home, that I could plant my roots in. And when my dad retired from the U.S. Army, we chose to settle down permanently in the North Country. We moved away several times.
How many times?
Three or four.
Three, and you kept coming back.
And we kept coming back.
Yeah. And why was that? Because your dad kept getting sent back to Fort Drum, or?
He kept requesting it.
Okay.
Yeah, we have strong ties to the area. Some family that's no longer with us, unfortunately. They settled down in the area. And this area kind of made me who I am today.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so where'd you go to school?
I graduated in 2012 from Watertown High School. Mm-hmm. So I have some unique perspectives into the youth in the area. Yeah. One thing I noticed was, a lot of people when they're 18 years old, it's kind of a well-known fact in the area. A lot of people say, "Oh, I can't wait to leave the area," and then I left the area to pursue higher education elsewhere.
Where'd you go to school?
I graduated from SUNY Geneseo with a bachelor's in business administration. And then I came home, didn't really know what I wanted to do, kind of found my way into education. And now I have a master's in teaching from SUNY Potsdam. And I'm proudly employed as a teacher in the Watertown City School District.
Okay, so since when? How long you been with them?
So I've been teaching for 4 years now.
Okay. So you're looking to settle down and maybe buy a house a little while back? Is that what happened?
Yeah, so, one thing that builds long-term wealth that kind of leads to my goal of establishing roots in a community is purchasing a home. When I was in the market for a home, interest rates were kind of high. That put an impact on home affordability, something I'm passionate about. And so with interest rates rising, my options were kind of limited. And again, I've been passionate for a very long time about the city of Watertown. And a lot of people steered me away from the city of Watertown, because of some of the budget issues and the risk of property tax rates increasing and, the homelessness problem. And people were telling me to steer clear of Watertown. But I see it differently. I see Watertown as a community where we could be doing some things better. But, it's a great place to live and work. And I want people to, 18, 19 years old, when they graduate high school, to want to either stay in the area or go away to school and then come back and, do what I did. Set up shop in the community, raise a family, open a small business, things like that.
So, Anthony, was it at the point where you were looking to make a deal on a house, you started going to city council meetings as kind of a scouting mission to see how things were being run?
That's a good way of describing it. So, about halfway through my home purchase process, there was a lot of discussion back in June, I believe, about budget projections in years moving forward. My concern then kind of pivoted to oh my goodness, the city of Watertown's running or forecasted to run a pretty significant deficit. And a number was thrown out. It's not official, but they said something to the effect of a 70% tax rate increase, which, I'm from the area, and that's detrimental.
Are we talking about 2030 when the hydro deal runs out?
I don't know the specifics on the date, but the hydro is definitely something to be focused on as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you go to city council meeting, you want to find out who's running the city.
Well, I knew who was running the city.
Well, but you wanted to learn more about them.
Yeah.
And so how long have you been going to council meetings?
I've been regularly attending council meetings now since midsummer.
Okay, and what you've been finding out, is it reassuring or troubling or somewhere in between?
It's a mixture of the both. Also, it really depends upon the meeting. There are some meetings where, and I said this a few weeks ago, and I don't mince words. Sometimes I don't come across as the most refined guy. I'm not a politician. I'm a normal person. Again, school teacher. I wake up in the morning. I go to work, right? But a few weeks ago, I said, I feel like city government sometimes is a circus that none of us bought tickets for.
All right.
It's a lot.
Well, let me ask you, were you at a recent city council meeting that started with an appearance by a number of state police people?
You know, I was in attendance, and it was flooring. I didn't know how to react. I've never seen anything like that transpire.
Uh-huh. And was it an ongoing drama? That went on for a couple of hours, right?
It did. And, you know, I told myself I was going to leave at 8 if they didn't come back out. But I wanted to see the meeting through, and I wanted to see what they had to say when they came back out.
All right, and based on that and what you learned later, do you have any impressions looking back on that? Whether, I mean, that was the most unusual municipal meeting I think that any of us can remember.
Well,
we've been covering that or going to them for a long time. Based on that, being there and what you learned since, what do you think about all that transpired?
You know, it's really hard to have a good opinion of what occurred. Judging from what I've seen, it could have been handled a little differently. Now, I understand the scope of the investigation. It's been honestly it's gone into the court of public opinion. I don't believe in doing that. You know, I think city government, I think needs to tone down the rhetoric. I think we need to bring down the temperature. I think we have issues facing the city moving forward. And you know, I want to rise above the drama, and I want to get to work, you know, on behalf of residents.
Okay, bringing down the temperature, would a change in personnel on the council contribute to that?
I believe so.
Okay.
The recent changes, the last council election, I think some good decisions were made in the city. I have the utmost respect for anyone who runs for public office. Every single individual on the council I respect. They all bring something to the table. But I just think there's a lot of drama right now that we could be doing better.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mr. Olney's up for election.
He is.
And Ms. Ruggiero, and whether she runs seems up in the air. It seems like he is running, correct?
Yeah, I believe, has announced.
Yeah. And so do you think he needs to go?
You know, that is for the voters of this city to decide. What I think I offer is a fresh face, a new perspective. I'm an outsider. You know, I'm not a legacy candidate. You know, I don't yet have a great deal of name recognition in the community. I hope to change that moving forward.
Okay. At any rate, I gather that you believe this sparring between the two factions, of which Mr. Olney is a part, needs to stop.
Absolutely. It's not benefiting the city residents overall, and it honestly paints our city in a very negative light. Mm-hmm. Only because I've seen the articles. You know, we have news in Syracuse and Rochester covering what's occurring in Watertown, New York, with police showing up to a city council meeting, which I'm not necessarily in disagreement with that. You know, they're conducting an investigation. You know, I don't believe they were summoned specifically to that meeting. I think they were looking for an opportunity, you know, to have the entire council together, and they took the opportunity. State police is entirely separate from city government. Actually, in going off of that, you know, there's been a lot of discussion about the phone issue. I agree with Councilman Olney's decision not to hand over his phone, unless you see a subpoena or you have a warrant, a search warrant. Then I agree with his decision ultimately. Mm-hmm.
Well, it appears that the investigation may stem way back a couple of years to the golf course purchase.
Yes.
Would you have been on board with that purchase? Do you have any feelings on it?
I have extremely strong feelings. $3.4 million. My issue with the golf course lies not exactly in the purchase itself, but the price. The price, by all metrics I've seen, was grossly overinflated. And again, any decision I make would always be rooted in what's best for the taxpayer. And recreation is important. You know, I grew up going to July 4th at Thompson Park. I grew up going to the pools. I grew up going to, you know, the splash pad once we had that. Mm-hmm. And the golf. Yeah.
Well, the city has traditionally had these amenities, including pools, 3 at some times, the zoo.
Yes.
Put a lot of money into the municipal arena a few years back.
Yes, that's another place that I frequent a lot. Actually, I'm going there tonight for a hockey game.
Do you think the city can continue to afford all these things going forward?
You know, one of the incumbents says a city of this size can do anything. I'm inclined to disagree, only because, and it's really unfortunate to say this, we have a dwindling population. we have a dwindling tax base, and we have a budget that, if left unchecked, will lead to significant financial strain on city residents. The population of Watertown was closer to 30,000, when I was a kid, and we're at 24,000 today. At some point, you can't maintain the same level of amenities in the short term, right? If we reverse some of these economic declines and we revitalize Watertown and, we pass policies that promote small business growth and, push residents or push people from the area to say, you know what, there's a lot of good things going on in Watertown, New York, and let's look at the housing there, of which, housing is very affordable here for a first-time home buyer in comparison to some other communities.
Well, let's talk about homes and homelessness,
Yes,
which you brought
yes.
up earlier. And since you've been here for a while, you've probably seen the
I have.
burgeoning, what we never used to see on the streets before is
Yeah.
people pushing carts and literally towing their belongings during the daytime to wherever they go at night.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about that?
It's really unfortunate what's occurring with the unhoused population locally. I wish those people the best, especially in this weather. I mean, I got winded in the cold just walking from my car into the studio today.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what it would feel like right now to be unhoused. I don't blame city government for this issue. There's a variety of reasons this is occurring. Sometimes it's state policy. Sometimes, it is a reluctance to follow guidelines and rules set forth by, these agencies trying to help. They have pretty stringent rules, is my understanding. But some of it also comes down to, the rents in the area, and rent being entirely unaffordable. I know people who rent, and their rent's more than my mortgage, which I can't fathom. You can't build long-term wealth if, you're spending $1,200, $1,300, even $1,600 a month on rent.
Well, it does seem like there's been a lot of building of low and moderate income housing recently. Why do you think the rents are still so high?
I don't have a good answer to as why rents are what they are. I know that I believe Resolution 5 last night, at the city council meeting, which I did briefly speak on, was about this pilot agreement with a developer out of Rochester. Anytime someone wants to come into Watertown to build affordable housing and provide, to fill, as some of the council members last night alluded to fill a need in the community, that is absolutely a great thing. But, and I have to make this point here, it's unfavorable to the taxpayers in this city if, to come to this agreement and say, we'll give you $50,000 a year in payment in lieu of taxes and 2.5% more each year for the next 30 years. And I said it at the council meeting last night. It's unfair to the taxpayers because unless you can guarantee that my property taxes are only going to increase 2.5% next year, which I don't think there's a single member on that council that could do that.
Anthony, let me play devil's advocate. If the agreement was not passed and the development does not happen, there would be a big fat zero of that tax revenue.
And I did consider that, and it was a hard decision. Getting up there and saying that, only because, the representative from this developer, he sounded like an excellent gentleman. He sounded like a nice guy. It sounded almost as if the city was being threatened in a way. And what I mean by this is he got up there and said, well, if you guys don't approve this pilot agreement, we could just go back and, since we're a nonprofit, we could just go back and claim correctly, I might add, they're providing homes to the disabled and to veterans and to the unhoused, and there are tax breaks for that. So essentially he was saying if the city doesn't give us a tax break, we'll get it from elsewhere.
I see. Okay, so you didn't appreciate his tone.
I wouldn't say that. It wasn't the tone. It was really the gravity of the situation, and there was really no good decision to be made.
Okay.
The project's going to happen. The city was put in a tough position to where they needed to give a tax break. Or potentially, as you said, take less.
Yeah. Well, the city does face what's considered called a financial cliff in 2030.
Yes.
But a very lucrative hydro deal with what is now used to be Niagara Mohawk, and is now National Grid, expires. and the city needs to brace. Do you have any, there's been commissions, boards, so far I haven't seen any real good way of dealing with that when it happens. What are your thoughts?
You know, and I knew hydro would come up. I am currently educating myself on the issue. I did read, they brought in someone from Amber Energy a few years ago. I read Mr. Skip Tremble's report on some of the options that the city of Watertown can explore. Again, this is, you know, an extremely complex issue. And this issue, any candidate that says they have a plan, I'd love to see the plan, especially since, you know, council members have been discussing this for several years and no one has put forth a plan. Myself included. My plan, honestly, is to take a whole of community approach. The council last night mentioned the importance of getting this committee, this task force back together, bringing in some representatives and looking at options. And that would be my plan, is to work with the council and work with any representatives that come in to put forth a plan that makes the most sense to the taxpayers of the city in the long term.
Well, good luck with that, Anthony. That's a really tough issue. You know,
it is.
I don't know how that's going to be dealt with. You have a Facebook page, Anthony Velasquez for council or city council?
Anthony or Velasquez for Watertown City Council. Yes.
Okay. On it, I think you describe yourself as an underdog in the race. Is that the way you feel?
You know, I am an underdog. I briefly alluded to it previously, and we have great candidates. They all bring something to the table. I have, again, respect for anyone who puts themselves out there publicly and says, hey, I want to run for office. I want to represent people, normal people. But I think we need some new faces and some new perspectives. Again, I'm not a legacy candidate. I don't have a well-known family name in the area. You know, I'm a person who cares about their community and wants to see it thrive and prosper long term.
All right. Well, I'm sure we'll hear more from you in the future. But for now, anything else you want to say to whoever's watching this and maybe voting in the election later this year?
Yeah, just to closely analyze, you know, the rhetoric coming from the candidates, closely analyze, you know, their impact on your pocketbook moving forward, and look at each candidate as a whole person, and to elect candidates that you can be proud of, and, you know, to think that they're working on your behalf.
All right, very good. Anthony, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. Good luck. We'll be watching.
Thank you.